Panoramic stitching is finally here, so in this video let's take a look at this brand new and exciting extension for Luminar Neo. Whether you're capturing stunning vistas, mountainscapes, sunsets, or even the night sky, panoramic photos can be a beautiful way to do it. So the fact we can now merge those pano shots inside of Luminar Neo is really exciting to me. I'm lucky enough to have access to the pre-release beta version that we'll be looking at today, with full public release coming on the 20th of July. If you've got the subscription version of Luminar Neo, you'll get access to this Pano tool as soon as it's released. And if you've got the standalone version of Luminar Neo and you like the look of this, you'll need to purchase it as an extension to plug in. And you can get that as a $39 discount as an early bird, and I'll put a link to that in the description below if you're interested, or it'll be $49 once it's actually released. I've been playing around with it, running some tests, and although we're still in the beta version at the moment, the results have been excellent. True to 𝗥𝗲𝗰's innovative approach of creating tools to allow us to process our photos differently, this tool is no exception. It's quite different to handling panos than in other applications. So while it's really functional, it's also a lot of fun to use as well. Let's take a look at it. I'm currently in the catalog view, and as you can see, I have access to the Panorama stitching tool right here. But in order for you to see that, you'll need to come up to your extras button here, click that, and as you can see, this is now the 8th extension for Luminar Neo. I already have it installed, but prior to that, it will just have a button that says install, click that, and then you will also have access to it here. When you click on Panorama Stitching, the tool opens up, and then you're able to drag 2 or more photos or one video here to start. I said they do things differently. Pano video, very cool, I'll get to that. Okay, I'm going to jump into a folder which contains 3 photos shot left to right as a panorama, and then all I need to do is just drag them in and let go, and those photos get populated into the tool, and then all I need to do is click start. And now we're presented with the panorama stitching interface and this teeny weeny little thumbnail here of our image. But we can use this scroll wheel on our mouse just to zoom in a bit. But the reason it's kept quite small is because, as you can see, I can actually click on this and drag it around to change where the projection ends up. And the only thing you really need to concern yourself with is the type of projection that you're applying to your photos. We've got 5 different options here: spherical and cylindrical that you've already seen, Mercator, plane, and fisheye. In this video, I'm not going to bore you with the mathematics that goes into those different projection models. So what I'd recommend you do is actually just have a play around and get a feel for these different projection styles. But in a nutshell, the concept is this: your photos are being projected, a bit like a movie onto a movie theatre screen. They're being projected out. And what does that screen look like? Is it flat, like in a movie? Is it curved, like a cylinder? Is it spherical and bulbous? And the type of projection that suits your photos best will depend on several factors, such as how wide your field of view is with your lens, how close you are to the nearest subject, things like that. So there's quite a bit that plays into it. So like I say, I recommend just playing around with those different settings, and you will get a feel for what works best. Because for a lot of my panoramic photography, I'll be shooting things way off in the distance with a telephoto lens. I won't be including any foreground elements. The cylindrical projection seems to work best because what I'm photographing is way off in the distance, and it's almost like as I'm panning around, that is mapping a cylinder way off in the distance. Probably not my best explanation ever, so like I say, my recommendation is to play around and start to get a feel for those projection models. But once you're happy with whereabouts you're positioning your panorama within this viewing plane, just come down to click continue, and then we're presented with the crop tool, and all we need to do is just bring it in so that we're only including pixels with photographic information. And once we're happy, we just click crop and then save that photo. And then once it's done, Luminar Neo cleans out the panoramic stitching tool, so we're ready to use it again, and moves us over to the panoramic stitching folder. And this is where all of the panos that we've made get saved. And then we're free to come into the edit module and apply any of our Luminar Neo tools, just as we would to any other photo. It's that easy. Bear in mind, as I said, I'm working with the beta version, the pre-release version of the Pano stitching tool. But at the moment, while it does accept raw files for the processing of those panos, the output is not raw. The best you've got is a 16-bit TIFF, and as you know, that's not quite as good as having all of that lovely rich raw data. And so there is a workflow I'd recommend for actually putting your files into the panos to get the best result. Let me show you what we do. Okay, let's jump back to the catalogue. And I think for demonstration purposes, I am going to work with these 3 photographs here. As you can see from the information dialog box here, we are working with raw files. So I'm going to click the first one, second and third, and now I'm just going to drag them over into the Pano stitching tool. And now I'm going to open up our options. Yeah, we do have a few by clicking that ellipsis there. And we have lens correction, so we can turn that on, and we also have chromatic aberration reduction. Currently I've got no option for the ghost reduction, and I'm wondering if that's purely because this is the beta version. Anyway, I'm going to click start. Luminar is going to run its processing, and already I'm noticing a big difference in processing time, and that's obviously because I'm asking Neo to do more computations because I'm throwing more data at it in that raw file. So yes, it's going to take a little longer than what I used previously, which were JPEG files. But now it's stitched the file together, and I can just scroll in on my mouse and just check I'm happy with the look of the photo, which I am. I need to come out one just to get an overall kind of feel for how this file is looking. Currently we've got the spherical projection, it's not too bad. Why don't I try 𝗥𝗲𝗃? Now, while I might not know exactly how to say this guy's name, I do know this much. He's the guy responsible for the mapping projection that we use when we unwrap the Earth, the globe, and project it onto a flat map that we can look at. It is the 𝗥𝗲𝗃 projection that's being used. So that's the same projection method we're using here, which is pretty cool. Now, it's only a slight difference, but if I zoom in, you should be able to see that the trees on the left and the tree on the right, they actually look like they're tilting away from the camera. If I pull it down, it straightens them up. So what I want to do is make sure those verticals are nice and true. And that doesn't look too bad as it is. So I'm just going to go with that, click continue, and I'm going to pull my crop in. I just want to lose the dead pixels either side and at the bottom as well. Once I'm happy with it, I'll just click crop and then save. And I'd recommend leaving as much of those live pixels as possible in this initial crop, because you can always go in later and use Luminar's crop feature to refine the result. Okay, so now we've got our merged panorama file, and you can see that I wasn't quite accurate enough with my crop here. I've left some dead pixels, but like I say, it's no problem because we can crop it a little bit more refined later. You know, I've still got access to my normal crop tool, so I could bring that in. But here's the issue with working this way. So I've used Mask AI just to grab the sky very quickly. It's going to be a very rough selection, probably with a bit of haloing going on, but that's okay. Just for demonstration purposes, I just wanted to show you that if I actually darken this down, you can see how the clouds are just kind of getting muddy and there's no real detail being introduced. Even if I add contrast, you know, pull the highlights down, injected a bit of contrast with curves, it just doesn't look that good. And the reason for that is simple. We're not working on a raw photo anymore, so Luminar Neo doesn't have enough information to get its editing teeth into and bring back all of that information that we want. So the workaround that I'd recommend is that we pre-process those raw photos and then bring them into the Pano stitching tool. So let me show you what I consider to be the correct way to do it. So I'll come back to the catalogue and I'm just going to revert that back to the original state. And this time, if I bring the sky back on the actual raw photo, you'll see what a difference that makes. I'm just going to throw a camera standard profile on there, and I'm just going to drop the highlights down. And although that looks pretty ugly, you can see already the difference in the detail level that I'm able to achieve in the sky there. So let's just have a little play around with this and see if we can't get it just looking a little bit better. I'm going to change my white balance purely because once we have a custom white balance and we synchronize that across the set, we know that it's going to be matching. Whereas if we leave it as shot, if your camera's white balance was in auto, it may have just shifted that color temperature ever so slightly between the photos in the set, and we don't want that. We want them to match exactly. I'm going to tick all my options for optic corrections. And because this isn't really an editing video, I will just leverage Accent AI just to help us out and get things looking better much quicker. And even pop in just a little bit of the sky enhancer as well. If we close that down and press the / key, we can see our original. This is the before and this is after. Before and after. And now if I jump back to the catalog, we can select that whole set and we can just synchronize those adjustments across the set. So just in case you missed that, I came to adjustments, sync adjustments. You can also use the hotkey Ctrl+Shift+S with the photos selected that you want to synchronize. And now what you don't want to do is just drag those straight into the tool, because if you can see the little thumbnails here, they have reverted to their raw state, and that is not what we want. We actually want to use the photo with the changes that we just made. And how we're going to do that is by exporting these photos as nice high quality TIFFs. So I'm going to change the format to TIFF. That is going to allow us to use a bigger color space, the Adobe RGB color space. And rather than an 8-bit depth that JPEGs are confined to, we are able to use 16 bits of data. So it's going to give us higher quality photos. And if you decide to adopt this way of working, I would recommend setting up a temporary folder. So I've set up Panorama temporary files, and make sure you've added that folder so Luminar Neo can see it, and that is where these photos are going to get exported to. Now, I like to work with my files in as high a quality format as I can until I'm absolutely happy with my edit when I'm exporting it for its final output, and that's why I'm working with 16-bit TIFFs. However, if you're happy with that initial edit that you made for the panorama, then there's no reason why you can't just use JPEGs, and that will speed up the export process. That will also speed up that merging in the Pano Stitch tool as well, so entirely up to you. So now these edited raw files should appear for us in the Pano temporary files, and there we go. You can now see as I hover over this, this is a TIFF file, as are the other two as well. So I just grab these and drag them in. However, we currently still have the raw files there, so I'm just going to click these X's to get rid of those, and now drag these versions in. And interestingly, the photo that should appear on the left of the Pano, which was this one here, the thumbnail for it has appeared on the right. Let's click start and see whether that affects the result. And as you can see, it hasn't, it's perfect as it is. And so now we've got a lovely rich sky in our Pano, which is what we hoped for. I'm just going to click continue on that. We don't even need to crop it here if we don't want to. I could just save it as it is. And there you go. As you look at the thumbnails side by side, you can clearly see what a marked difference that is. This is the export from the raw versions, and this is the export from our pre-processed version. So that's working with photos in the Pano tool. It really is very easy, and it's a lot of fun too. But it's not only JPEGs, TIFFs and RAWs that we can fire into the Pano stitching tool. You can actually throw video in there too. So let me show you how that works. It's a really cool feature. Okay, so here's a video that I took the other day. That's my son there. He was involved in a football tournament. They go on and score a goal. And as you can see, I'm tilting the camera or turning the camera from left to right during that filming sequence. And it turns out we can actually use this in the Pano stitching tool. So I'm just going to drop that video in there and click start. And as you can see, as we play through, it starts from the halfway line and the camera rotates all the way to the goal as the ball follows on through there. So there's enough visual data to capture a panoramic scene. So all I need to do is click continue. Luminar runs its processing again. And just like that, just like before, we now have an image from our video, which I just think is so cool. The projection of sphericals worked pretty well for this one, so I just want to make sure I'm not including any dead pixels in this one. Don't need too much in the way of grass in the foreground, not too much sky either. Maybe we don't need the goalkeeper. Let's bring that in, bring it in there, click crop, and then I save that out. And there you go, we've got a panoramic photo from a live action video. And I think that's insanely cool that we can do that. And a really neat feature which I don't have access to, but I have seen it demonstrated by a tech at 𝗨𝘀, is that you can actually select the bit of live action that you want to feature in the final photo. I won't go into too much detail about that because until I've had a chance to play with it personally, I can't really comment on it. It just looked very cool. Anyway, that is it for Pano stitching and the new extension. Like I say, if you want to get hold of it, I've got a link to it in the description below. Oh, I'm not going to demo it in this video, but I nearly forgot to mention, you can also do vertical panoramas as well. So shooting top to bottom or the other way around and merge them vertically as well. So that's another really cool thing that you can do with the panorama stitching extension. I can't believe I nearly forgot to mention it. If you'd like to learn a little bit more about how I'd actually shoot my panoramas and then stitch them together previously inside Lightroom, you can check that out in that video right there. And if you haven't subscribed already, why not? Go and click that button there and I'll see you in the next video. Oh, and if you want to see some of my work on my landscape photography site, I'll put a link to that right on the screen right now as well. I love doing the panos, so check them out. Okay, thanks so much guys. See you in the next video.